Good afternoon. Thank you all so much for joining us. My name is Jason Price. I'm a director with the SoCal chapter of International Association of Microsoft Channel Partners, otherwise known as IAMCP. And this afternoon, we're taking a deep dive into the world of Microsoft licensing. We intend this to be an interactive forum. Yes, there are some presentations to show. Yes, there are a bunch of demonstrations we can do. Our intention is that you will gain a rich understanding of all the licensing options that are out there and apply some best practices for Azure, Dynamics Platform, Power Platform, M365, and Copilot. We're all here intending to evolve ourselves from being transactional with our clients to building trusted relationships. And we're looking forward to our partners that are here from the wonderful company Ingram Micro to take us on this journey. Let me introduce those to you first. A technical enablement engineer at Ingram Micro, specialized in Microsoft's business application suite. That's all the world of Dynamics and Power Platform. He spends a lot of time building with these tools. He loves the no-code aspect, especially when it comes to business process automation. He is Mr. Anthony Todorov.
Hey, everybody.
And with him is a Microsoft technical enablement engineer for Ingram Micro. He joined in 2003, and since then he's been playing a key role in supporting Ingram Micro's SMB IT reseller community as an architect, both on-prem and cloud. He has over 30 years of experience in IT, ranging from end user support to data center engineering to teaching Microsoft technologies, and holds an MCSE in Microsoft on-prem solutions and an MCSA in Microsoft Cloud. Ladies and gentlemen, David Priebe.
Thank you, and welcome everyone.
And I think actually we wanted to kind of turn it over to all of you. So I'm going to be watching our chat column here. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them into there, or you can always click the raise hand button like I'm doing right now, and we can unmute your line and have you ask your question right off the bat. Let me let in our note takers, and we'll welcome anybody else that happens to join us. So gentlemen, I will stop sharing, and I think the floor is yours.
Great. Well, I'll take over here. Nice to meet you all. My name's Anthony. I'm going to show you a little bit of the Power Platform and specifically the low-code side in comparison to something like Dynamics 365, which is, if you're unfamiliar with Dynamics, it is a suite of different business applications, each tailored for different verticals and industries. The most popular one being Dynamics Sales, and I'm pulling up my sales environment now. Sorry about that. I thought I had it loaded. And authenticating into that, because we all, we're all love doing MFA. And let me hold that screen up for you guys. So what I have up here is a model-driven app in Power Apps, and I actually threw this together in under 10 seconds and just populated it with the different Dataverse tables for accounts, activities, contacts, leads, and opportunities. And if we look at something like, Dynamics for Sales, which I have loading here. Hopefully that comes up in a second. You'll notice it looks pretty much the same. We've got the same, much of the same tables. Obviously, I can, in this model-driven Power App that I'm kind of putting together live, I can still create new contacts. The form looks very much the same as it does inside of Dynamics. Same for accounts. I can even create new activities like tasks, emails, appointments, phone calls, right? And see them populated here under my name. That's because this is powered by the same backend tabular structure as the main Dynamics app, which is Dataverse. One thing that's going to be missing from this, though, is a lot of the business process flows, and you don't have the Copilot sidecar here that you do in Dynamics Sales. You also don't have what's called Sales Accelerator, which is kind of like a workflow tool to help you set up disseminating out leads or deciding, what's assigned to who and things like that. So let's see if my sales demo is loaded yet. It wants me to sign in again. Okay, here we go. So this is Dynamics for Sales. And it's just a blank white screen with a spinning. Just kidding. Here we go. So as I said, you'll see it looks much the same. You've got all those tables on the side here. There's, a few more that we didn't have in our Power Apps because I didn't add them. But that's not really what's different. What's different is things like this is Sales Accelerator, like I mentioned. With it, we can create sequences to map leads and tasks to, certain sales folks based on conditions and criteria, and define work assignment rules. Right now, we could do the same things with a model-driven Power App, but Dynamics makes it really easy. It's kind of all. You just go to new sequence here, use a template or start from blank, and name it, just outbound, we'll say, and hit next. And we're making a sequence for contacts here. What should happen with new contacts? And you'll see there's kind of this workflow designer that's going to show up, right? And we can mess around with this and say, okay, the sequence starts here. We send an email, then we have some conditioning to maybe make a phone call for another meeting, and depending on how that goes, we're going to either complete our task or maybe we'll wait 2 days. And right, so it's kind of just this template is created, makes it really easy to reconfigure. I can click on any of these steps and customize, like that condition there. I can add a new step anywhere in here. It's very easy to do. And when when the sequence is assigned to a team or users, they're going to know exactly how to work contacts because they're going to have all these steps set up for them to just complete one at a time. And you can even have some of them complete automatically. Now, back in our Power App, none of that stuff is built out. We also don't have what's called a business process flow along the top of, say, our leads or opportunities. This is just an example lead. Actually, that's not a great table to use, so I'll just add another one. With those, missing, we can recreate them with, say, Power Automate. Let's just add all the leads tables so we don't have to determine which is the correct one. But it's really that easy to add these. Go with this. Yeah, so when we add a new lead here, it's pretty bare bones, whereas inside of Dynamic Sales, we go to leads and we create a new one once it loads. And it just brought us right to one. So we'll go back to our read-only grid. Make a new one. You see that there's been quite a bit of customization done to the new lead form, right? So we've got that initial field that we had in our Power App, or our initial form tile. We also have all these other tiles that have been added to the form where folks can populate stuff. We have this timeline control that's been added. A lot of these things are components you can add to a model-driven Power App, but you have to do all of that customization by hand, whereas, with sales, it's done. One thing that would take a fair bit amount of time to kind of configure yourself as this business process flow along the top. Whereas with Dynamics, it's a lot easier to come in and customize, what all of these steps are. In case you're not familiar with what a business process flow is, essentially it is a kind of queue that you have to work through, or set tasks that have to be checked off before you can progress something to the next stage for a record type. In this case, it's leads. So our qualify lead step has all these requirements. They need to be filled out in order to move to our develop stage. And in Dynamics, just out of the box, you've got this business process flow along the top for leads. There's a similar one for opportunities, and you could do customization to this, just like you could in a Power App. But it's kind of all there and pre-configured for you, and a little bit easy to work with. So what I advise is, if you are looking at the two and trying to decide whether or not to go with a custom built CRM model-driven app, it's or dynamic CRM that's fully built out, it's whether or not you want to build the business process flows and things that kind of trigger and automatically happen as you're working, and start to bake in some of the other components that sales has that Power Apps is missing. Let's see, we have on the account table like a timeline control and an all contacts view, right? So the tables are all linked together still. My accounts still roll up to, or roll down to contacts, and leads and opportunities still roll up to those entities. But what's missing is a lot of the process automation behind everything. Now, I just showed you guys the model-driven side of Power Apps so far, and I would be remiss not to show you the Canvas app side, which is more of a moldable, lighter version of Power Apps. And for that, I put together this invoice app, which is actually powered by a Power Automate flow, and I have that up here. And the idea behind this use case is, when let's say you've got like a mailbox where all your invoices are sent to for a company, right? So you've got a flow that triggers when an email arrives, and we could say it's from a specific person, or we could say the subject is invoice, and maybe it includes attachments or not. And then when we receive that, if it has an attachment, we get the information, we run it through our AI builder model here that we trained to pick out the pieces of that invoice that we want to put into our CRM, or in this case, our Canvas app CRM, or Canvas app invoice processing app. And we take those and we do two things here, because I wanted to kind of demonstrate both with this. We create an item in a SharePoint list. Reason I wanted to show this is because Power Platform has a ton of features and functionality that work as an extension to SharePoint, to really take lists and SharePoint sites and bring them alive with automations and apps that you can use to augment those. I also wanted to show this adding a new row to a Dataverse environment. In this case, it's the invoice table. And it adds all the same fields. You can see in our flow here, just added this step to add a new row, went to the invoices table, and here's all of our different fields for a record on the invoices table. And we just kind of, I just kind of plugged in, each value that I extracted from an invoice. So once an email was received, it populated the backend data that you're seeing here in this app. And I know they're all from kind of the same person, which is Fabricam, but these are all the different invoices that I sent myself to demonstrate this. This only took, a few hours to put together. And, as we click through, we can see all that information kind of in an app format. But it also was published to our Dataverse table for invoices. So if we go back to our CRM in a can here, and go to new tables, Dataverse table, and we look for our invoices table. Just going to add both. Yep, you can see that those are all right here as well. From, a datum was the vendor, it was an invoice to Fabricam, right? And it populated all of those records for us. We click on one. This is kind of the model driven app view. May look a little bit boring. You can do, you could customize your model driven apps to look pretty and have, other widgets in here, maps and things like that. But out of the box, this is what a model driven app looks like. So that's kind of what I wanted to show you guys. I don't know if there were any questions in the chat.
Yeah, I'm hoping there's a bunch of questions that are coming up. I don't see any here in the chat, but Dana, Eric, John, you're all able to unmute if you do have a question. Of course, we want to address licensing, but if there's something that's outside that realm, feel free to bring it forward.
Yeah, so I'll jump in just because this is kind of the world that I live in. So for other partners, they may have other questions, but around this, Anthony, maybe from a licensing standpoint, can you talk about the difference between model-driven Power Apps licensing versus Dynamics licensing, and is there a sweet spot somewhere where it makes more sense for Dynamics versus Power Apps, or is it situational? And maybe and I'll describe a situation that I had recently where we're working with a client who's looking for who came in looking for a CRM solution, but they're I'll say a very unique organization. Very is probably not appropriate when it's unique, but they're a unique organization because they're technically a nonprofit organization. Basically, they're a life flight organization run by a conglomerate of several counties in the state of, I forget whether it was Idaho, Washington, one of the mountain states, one of the very remote regions. And so just trying to provide healthcare to their constituents that live in that area where it is very remote. They were looking for a CRM platform, basically, that would help them keep track of the people who registered for this service because there was a fee associated with it. But also they needed to keep track of all their aircraft. They needed to keep track of their pilots. Basically, they were trying to use one app to keep track of everything. And it seemed like it was a better fit for a Power App solution, but you're talking about a lot of customization. Either way, you're talking about a lot of customization because it is unique.
Yeah, so you're right. That's really it, because when let's say you have someone deploy Dynamics for sales or service, what they'll typically do if they're going the Dynamics route is they'll look for the Dynamics app that's the closest fit, and then they'll start customizing from there, and they may mix and match. On the licensing question, by the way, so Dynamics sales starts at 65 per user per month. That's if paid yearly. I'll drop the pricing page in the chat for you guys, and then Sales Enterprise, which is what comes with the work assignment and the sequences, Sales Accelerator, and Copilot for Sales. That starts at 105 per user per month. The difference is Power Apps, for a model-driven app, it does require at least an app pass for every user accessing that app, but that's $5 per user per month, as opposed to 65 or 105. So no matter what, somebody's going to come in with either project, and there's going to be some upfront costs to deploy it and customize it, essentially tailor it to what their exact use case is. The real difference is the long-term licensing costs between the two. And I would say, you're more free when starting with kind of a blank slate with a model-driven or even a Canvas app than you are, taking pre-existing molds like Dynamic Sales or Service, and then adding the additional tables there. And it's just, you're kind of starting with more of a blank slate. I hope that helps.
Yeah. Also, aren't there some limitations in terms of numbers of fields and customization that you can do with Dynamics. If you go the lower cost, the license, the $65, the sales professional license, I think there's some limitations in there, aren't there?
There are. I don't know the exact number of those. I'll dig into them and I'll get that answer for you before we wrap up this call today. But yeah, you're right. There are some limitations around the amount of custom fields you can add and additional custom Dataverse tables. So I'll get that info for you.
Yeah, so that's I said. So it really is, especially in that type of a unique client need type of situation. We ended up going and proposing it based on a Power Apps build out, just because I couldn't see any way we were going to have to do so much customization either way that it seemed like just start, like you were saying, starting with a clean slate with Power Apps just was going to be an easier. And to your point, right, the lower cost of the license, because instead of $105 per user per month, you're looking at $5 per user per month potentially, or 20 if you go, depending upon. I think there's the other licensing where you go to 20, but either way, it's still dramatically lower.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice interface to build with. I mean, a lot of the customization you do on the dynamic side during a deployment is in the Power Apps Maker portal with the Dataverse tables. But I like being able to, when I'm making like a custom app, I can come over to data here and just kind of search through the connectors. And because let's say that that use case you talked about, let's say they already use like Intuit for something, QuickBooks for something, right? Or maybe they're a Gmail shop instead of an Outlook shop. Boo, right? Or they're really, they use LinkedIn or bookings, and all those connectors are here, and we can just pull those in to work with when building our app really easily. So yeah. As far as like the something I notice a lot, one of the biggest use cases I see with Power Apps is the extension from SharePoint, because there's a lot of organizations that are really, they revolve heavily around SharePoint. They've got tons and tons of lists, and they've baked out these really complicated processes around those lists, maybe approvals, maybe specific forms and things like that. Well, on a SharePoint list, you can't really do a lot of control with that form to say, hey, if somebody fills this, then require that they fill this, right? You can't do that kind of branching. You could actually put a Canvas app. I can open up I'll just open up a SharePoint site to show you guys that real quick. And you could bake a Power App into that form to fill information. And while I pull that up, I don't know if anyone had any other questions.
There's a dialogue going on chat about Microsoft Copilot Business. So I think we're addressing that. David's responding in chat.
Okay.
And I know David also has some additional resources to share too.
Yeah, should we maybe we should cut over to you, Mr. Priebe, then, and we'll spare everybody the SharePoint example.
Sure. Just give me 10 seconds to finish off my my entry here in the Teams chat. All right.
In the lead up to this event, and Jason, thank you for pulling all of this together and getting the team. I know that there were questions from some of the partners around M365 licensing and kind of the different SKUs and when it's appropriate for which license for what types of clients. So maybe, I don't know if you guys can talk a little bit about kind of use case scenarios for clients around M365 and the different licensing options that are available there.
Eric, it's like you read our mind and teed it up perfectly.
I try.
All right, so with that entry in the chat, and I'm going to now start sharing my screen. Yeah, this was the scenario that was presented, one of the scenarios. The other scenario was the one that Anthony was going over, which is Power Apps versus full-blown dynamics and when to use which and so on and so forth. But this is basically the key scenario that was that fell to my purview. And so basically, what I want to do here is I want to address this question, which is, okay, Microsoft has these enterprise level subscriptions, E3 and E5. When do we position one over the other? And I'm going to cheat here because I'm going to jump straight to an answer. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to work backwards from that answer to try and give you an idea of the support as, the argument as to why that answer is what we start with. And the key here to also understand is this. There's no hard and fast rule. These are all, the word that I want to use is negotiations, because in the end, what you're looking to do is you're looking to best match the needs of the organization with the subscription that we're offering to address those needs. So with that context, again, the answer really to this question of when to position E5 over E3 is this. And again, it's just a starting point because we can get into all kinds of adjacent discussions and such. But what you want to look for is you want to look for customers that fall under regulatory requirements. That is a primary low-hanging fruit, a primary target for the Microsoft 365 E5 solution. All right, why do I say that? Well, to start really examining this, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to basically try and compare. What do we get with these two different suites? And when we look at the core services that are germane to a Microsoft 365 subscription, what are we talking about? We're talking about Exchange Online. We're talking about SharePoint Online. We're talking about OneDrive. We're talking about the desktop applications. And we even are talking about a certain level of management in the form of Intune. And as you can see here, these two plans are identical. There is literally no difference between the features and services you get for the core Microsoft 365 feature set across Microsoft 365 E3 and Microsoft 365 E5. So then we have to start digging into, okay, if the core features are identical, then what we need to look at is what else do we get with these suites that really creates a differentiation. And this is really where we start looking at the major distinguishing characteristic that separates our E5 from our E3. Now, yes, up here at the top, we see a bunch of things like Teams Phone Standard, audio conferencing, and Power BI Pro. They're not to be dismissed, but these really aren't the main driver as to why we would position E5 over E3. Instead, what we look at is everything down below it. The entire Defender product line that we get that comes with Microsoft 365 E5. In addition to that, the entire Microsoft Purview feature set that also comes in Microsoft 365 E5. Fundamentally, Microsoft 365 E5 gives you all the proactive defense and protection from attack, as well as compliance-oriented technologies. And it's for this reason that we really, again, this is why we start with the scenario of any kind of customer that falls under regulatory compliance. Yes, E5 is a key they fall into the key target market for Microsoft 365 E5 offer. Now, if we go line by line item here, yeah, we really don't have enough time to dig into that. But just to give you an idea of some of the things here, what we see with Microsoft 365 E3 is it comes with the Defender for Endpoint Plan 1, while E5 comes with Defender for Endpoint Plan 2. What are the key distinguishing characteristics? Well, Plan 1 for Defender for Endpoint is all about proactive protection. Yes, you're going to get excellent protection in the Microsoft 365 E3. But then E5 and the Defender for Endpoint Plan 2 builds on top of that by not only giving you all of that same proactive protection, it also gives you vulnerability management. It gives you endpoint detection and response. It gives you auto investigation and remediation, where again, if it's something, and Defender for Endpoint identifies something going on a device, a security op can basically tell it to launch an automated investigation and dig into why there is something going on, why something was flagged on that endpoint. So it's all of those proactive post-incident identification feature sets that really are what you are given with the Defender for Endpoint Plan 2. And then down the list here, we see a whole bunch of other Defender technologies that E3 doesn't even begin to give you. Including Defender for Identity. What's that all about? That's basically a Defender technology that's designed to be deployed to your on-prem Windows Server Active Directory domain controllers. So a whole bunch of the Entra capabilities that are designed to protect identities up in the Entra ID Cloud, Microsoft's directory service for Microsoft 365. Yep. Now we can basically bring them down to protect our Windows Server Active Directory domain controllers. Defender for Cloud Apps, what's that all about? That's basically what you can think of as a proxy, where basically when users go out to access internet resources or access things in other clouds, if you have a customer that has a multi-cloud solution, maybe Google plus Microsoft 365, well, one of the things that Defender for Cloud Apps can do is it can basically take all the security policies that you've defined for your Microsoft tenant and enforce them inside of the Google tenant. So all the data protection settings that you've set in your Microsoft 365 world now can be implemented in Google through the Microsoft solution. So you don't have to go managing multiple tenants and multiple technologies to get the same result. So that's the layer, again, just a few of examples of some of the Defender capabilities that we get with E5. Now, going down further, where we come down here to our E5 information protection and governance, E5 insider risk management, and E5 e-discovery and audit. Those are the three major pillars of Purview. And as you may very well know, Purview is Microsoft's compliance family of products. And basically what this is giving you is the full suite of Microsoft Purview solution. So you're getting everything under the Purview sun. So that's the big add-on there that Microsoft 365 E5 gives you. Now, there is one big context that I do want to set in this slide, because I don't want to make it sound like that Microsoft 365 E3, you shouldn't even begin to look at it if you're dealing with a customer that falls under regulatory compliance. The big thing here with E3 is this. Microsoft includes enough compliance capabilities in E3 to allow organizations to actually meet regulatory requirements like HIPAA, like GLBA, basically PCI, all of that stuff. So yes, E3 has the ability to meet those requirements. And you can see here some purview technologies up at the top, such as the data loss prevention, but also very key to this discussion is the technology called out as Azure Information Protection Premium, Plan 1, which does come in Microsoft 365 E3. AIP, as it's known, Plan 1 does give you the ability to do sensitivity labels. And with those sensitivity labels, you now have the ability to set policy to protect sensitive data. And again, when combined with data loss prevention, yes, these are the technologies that are necessary in order for organizations to be able to meet regulatory compliance. What E5 does is, again, it adds on top of these core technologies by providing you additional functionality that makes it easier for organizations to do audits, to basically make sure that they are maintain compliance even internally inside the organization. Of particular key here is the insider risk management, where basically what we see is a growing trend inside of organizations where information is either maliciously or unintentionally leaked to the outside world, bringing organizations into focus from an investigation perspective because, again, they've broken compliance. With these additional technologies, what Microsoft gives organizations that have Microsoft 365 E5 are all the tools necessary to do those types of investigations, as well as to proactively make sure that users don't break the quote-unquote rules that they need to follow. So the big thing here again is we really look at E5 as providing all of the enhanced security and compliance capabilities above and beyond the basics, which E3 does give you. And that message really resonates with any organization that does fall under regulatory compliance. Now, additionally, there are other details that we have to consider here. And that is the fact that Microsoft, they also have these individual suites. So they have what's known as the Defender Suite, formerly known as the Microsoft 365 E5 Security, and they now have the Purview Suite, which is formerly the Microsoft 365 E5 Compliance. Well, an organization could basically get Microsoft 365 E3 and then purchase these suites in addition to E3 in order to fundamentally get the same defender and protection and compliance and purview capabilities that they get in E5. So why would we position E5 when we could basically do that? Well, that's where cost comes into the picture. If a customer has Microsoft 365 E3, basically the retail cost is $36 per user per month. You layer on that the Defender Suite and the Purview Suite, and now basically you have a grand total of about $60 per user per month in order to get these technologies. Whereas with Microsoft 365 E5, it's only going to cost $57 per month. And let's not forget, remember, we have the Teams phone system, we have Power BI, we have those other things that Microsoft 365 also brings to the table that, again, you can raise with the customer to make sure that they're aware of in case they want to start driving or leveraging the Microsoft 365 E5 suite. And in addition to this, when we look at organizations that are considering E5, what are the odds that they don't already have some form of security solution in place in their organization? Well, this is where we can point to the Microsoft Defender solution. And yeah, Microsoft Security is nothing to dismiss. They have for quite a while now proven themselves to be a top tier performer in all of the security spaces. And this slide here is just an example of some of the leadership that they've shown, particularly from the Forrester Wave analysis perspective. So it is possible to have a discussion with the customer to say, hey, you're getting all of these security capabilities, These may very well be able to displace other products that you've deployed inside your organization, and it can offer you a cost savings capability. And more than that, when we take a look at compliance, basically what Microsoft has identified is oftentimes when we see larger customers that fall under regulatory compliance, yeah, they're using a whole bunch of other vendors in order to ensure that their organization is capable of meeting compliance. Once again, with Purview, we now have the ability to have a unified solution through a single vendor that gives them access to one portal that they now can manage all of their compliance requirements through. And again, we can essentially displace a boatload of other solutions that the customer may have implemented and provide a cost savings to them. So again, this is really the logic behind why when we look at E5 versus E3, oftentimes what you want to do is you want to start by looking at any organizations that may fall under regulatory compliance. But are we limited to that? No. Any organization that is very wants to improve their security and compliance capabilities, even if they don't fall under regulatory compliance, this suite is going to be something that is going to be of appeal to them. So again, the starting point for the analysis really is take a look at any customers that fall under regulatory compliance, but also understand that this can be expanded to address the needs of pretty much any organization out there that really has an emphasis on making sure that their data is protected and that they have very, very good defenses against hackers from a security perspective. So with that said, that's really the logic and the rationale that I would offer up with regard to that question of when do I position E3, when do I position E5? And again, it really just comes down to focusing on the security and compliance capabilities. And the last thing that I'll leave you with here is, yeah, this tends to get technical. So it's not usually something that is going to be live in the realm of a sales conversation so much as what it's going to go to is it's going to be a pre-sales technical conversation to really show the customer what the value is that they're getting with E5. So with that said, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to see if there are any questions in the chat or any questions anyone wants to offer.
See none in chat, but the lines are open. Feel free to unmute. John, Eric, Dana, any follow on from that?
John might have touched on this already, but what does Copilot, if anything, and the new changes, the new licensing that is coming, does that make any impact to this? Because my understanding is that there is some Copilot capabilities that are coming to M365. Are they coming uniformly across, or is there more incentive for one licensing versus another? Also, I know, we talked about E3 versus E5, but I know from my past experience, I've had clients on Business Premium and oh gosh, what's the kiosk licensing and just I have one client in particular had a very mixed environment of kiosk licensing, E3 licensing, just a whole lot of stuff thrown together, and trying to have a cohesive conversation with them around what they should keep, what they should consolidate, when's the right time to do what with all of that. And so maybe that might help as well.
Sure. All right.
It's not, it seems like for a lot of clients, it's not as simple as E3 versus E5, I guess.
And it isn't. To that last point, One of the questions that we oftentimes get as pushback is, why does Microsoft make it so complicated? Well, the reason as to why Microsoft makes it complicated is because what they want to do is they want to give customers the options that they need in order to tailor a solution specifically to their needs. So instead of having one SKU where everyone is forced to that one SKU, you now have a plethora of different SKUs out there, and you can mix and match to your heart's content. So to customers that basically might have a business premium and an F SKU, which stands for frontline worker and all these other things, basically what it's come down to is you have a customer and a partner who have worked together to really make sure that the subscriptions that the customer has purchased meet the needs that the end customer has. Now, one of the key things with this is, does that customer really fall under regulatory compliance? And odds are they probably don't. That's why you're seeing a whole bunch of these mixed and matched subscriptions. They may have people on the floor that, again, are going to leverage the frontline worker subscriptions, and then they're going to have people in an office which are going to better map to maybe a business premium or maybe even an E3 subscription. So yes, those types of situations do occur. But again, if you have a customer that really does fall under regulatory compliance, oftentimes what we see is that when we start introducing the E5 capabilities, their interest really increases because of the value proposition of everything that comes in the E5 subscription. So that's the second piece of your question. Now, the first piece, which is, okay, are there any other things going on with Microsoft 365 E5 or any other subscriptions that may very well help shift some of the make it more valuable for E5? Absolutely. I just posted a link in the chat. Microsoft announced this at Ignite, where basically what they're saying is, okay, any E5 customer now will have some level of entitlement to Microsoft Security Copilot. That's basically what this says. And that's the long and short of it. Now, I say some kind of entitlement because the entitlement is going to scale based on the number of E5 subscriptions the end customer has. And what is the benefit of Security Copilot? Well, basically, it is a Gen AI that is trained on security incidents. So basically, what it's going to be able to do is plug into the Microsoft Defender XDR, all the Defender SKUs that we saw on E5, and it's going to be able to take a look at all the things happening across the board, and it's going to be able to better isolate and better identify security incidents based on its training than a human-operated analyst would be able to do through the Defender interface. So the whole point here of of Security Copilot is to bring again, Gen AI capabilities to better identifying and intercepting attacks that may be happening inside of the organization. And yes, these entitlements are now part of Microsoft 365 E5.
And companion, I believe, to Eric's question on what is fundamentally inside the base Microsoft 365 license for Copilot Chat, there are improvements that Microsoft is constantly making. They're just kind of forcing everybody to get a little bit used to using Copilot Chat, but without that work data connection, so that we will see a new Copilot Chat experience in the desktop Microsoft clients, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and you'll be able to access your work files inside of Outlook with Copilot Chat, but not in the other apps. So they're just bringing everybody to the cliff to get them used to using Copilot, but wanting more access to their work data. And I've been following that by two means. One, the weekly update you get on Sunday night that Microsoft sends out to admins of all the updates that are coming, and the other is on the Microsoft release roadmap, to keep track of everything that's happening. So that's one way to stay on top of it, Eric. There's another question here, David, in chat. Do you see a time when Microsoft will abandon the Office 365 nomenclature and completely migrate to the Microsoft 365 nomenclature?
I really don't. The question should also expand even to this. Do we foresee a time when Microsoft will eliminate standalone offers such as Exchange Online Plan 1, Exchange Online Plan 2, and force everyone to go to a Microsoft 365 suite? Again, based on what I said earlier, Microsoft's desire to enable users and customers to tailor solutions to their specific needs. Yeah, I don't see Microsoft getting rid of Office 365 or the standalone offers in favor of Microsoft 365 pretty much ever. Now, with that said, what I will say is this: Microsoft definitely wants you in a Microsoft 365 suite. So what you're going to see is you're going to see a whole lot of incentives to drive people to purchase the suite rather than the standalone offers or the Office 365 options. So that is basically where I see Microsoft really going, is they're going to put their money behind Microsoft 365. They're just not going to get rid of anything at this point.
Excellent. I don't see any other questions here in chat. Floor is still open if you want to ask one directly of David and Anthony. Hearing none, I think we might just wind this up to say, gentlemen, thank you so much for bringing your expertise to bear. Eric, I do see you're unmuted.
I was going to ask more for the audience's sake.
Yes.
Maybe not for today, but around Azure. Do people have questions around Azure? I know that's a whole other can of worms and a whole other topic, but maybe a future session on Azure, because I know that that's a whole other challenge. How to price out Azure, how to do that correctly, and so from an audience standpoint, would folks be interested in another session, maybe more focused around Azure? We have a quiet group today. John says yes. Thank you, John.
John's in. And we'll also have some results from our member survey that we provided out to the SoCal chapter last week. So I'll surface that up to us. Great suggestion, Eric. And again, David, Anthony, thank you so much for the demos, the detailed, in-depth explanation of these licenses. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today. Go Ingram Micro.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for having me.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. At this point, we'll kind of wrap things up. Feel free to funnel your questions to me. I can send them off to these gentlemen after this time, and we'll see you around the IAMCP network. Take care, everybody.
Thanks all.
Bye, guys.